It is now 10:15, so we will get started. Good morning, everyone. I am Tammy Dunn, and it is my joy and pleasure to serve as the Vice President of Academic Affairs for A Plus College Ready. And I am so excited to be moderating this talk this morning, this informational session, because we are in the arena of preparing. A Plus College Ready is in the arena of preparing computer science teachers, and we get tons of questions about certification. Well, we've got you covered today because we have two wonderful presenters. The first is Dr. Kelly Stanton, and she is our State Department representative. She's an education specialist there in teacher certification. And I know Kelly well because she is our go-to when we have questions about certification, and she helps us out. Here's what's fun to know about Kelly that I didn't know until this morning. Kelly has a Bachelor's of Science degree in computer science. So what could be more fitting than she's here today to help us figure that out. And I also love that her pride and joy are her two grandchildren. You're singing my song, Kelly, when you say that. I have five, just in case someone wants to know. And Carol will tell you that you always have to hear about my grandchildren if you have more than a 10-minute conversation with me. So Dr. Stanton will be our first presenter, and then she will be followed by my dear friend and colleague, Carol Yarbrough. Carol is a computer scientist by trade. She came from the industry, came from computer science industry, and became a school teacher. So kudos to Carol for that. And Carol worked at ASFA, the Alabama School of Fine Arts. And when A Plus College Ready joined, got into the CS arena. Of course, no one on our staff knew anything about this subject. And so we tapped Carol as a part-time content specialist. As she worked with ASFA, she really helped us get our computer science programming off the ground, and it grew to the place that we needed a full-time employee, and of course she was it. So just so you all know, Carol is or was, I'm not sure what the correct verb is, the first fully certified computer science teacher in the state of Alabama. And of course, she did that by completing the Praxis, which she'll talk about today. And I just want you all to know that she made a 100 on the Praxis. So we feel like we have a very qualified person leading this work. So I'm going to turn over to them, and I'm just going to step back. I am going to man the chat. And so if you have any questions, I'll man the chat and the Q&A, but I'll be sure our wonderful panelists know about your questions, and then they will answer. Certainly, I will not be the one answering. So Kelly, Dr. Stanton, I'm going to turn it over to you, so please take us away. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can.
Good morning. I am so happy to see all of the good mornings, and everyone's excited to get started. Because Carol and I are going to share this, we're tag teaming. Speak a little bit fast. Please put your questions in there, and then Tammy will, and when we have our Q&A, I'll try to address them then. I'll also post this particular PowerPoint presentation on our State Department website under the Educator Certification section if you have questions. Hold 1 second, and I'm going to pull up my presentation. Let's see if I can share. I think it's going to share my emails. So, hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. You all sent it to a colleague to look at it. Can everyone see the PowerPoint presentation? Tammy, can you see it?
Kelly, I'm still seeing your email. You'll probably have to click on that tab at the top or down there where that's open.
Still not sharing. Can you not see it?
All right, so you're not sharing your screen at all now.
Okay.
Cameron is saying, be sure you share desktop instead of share tab, because it might have just been sharing that single tab. And then if you can get it on your desktop.
Let me try again. What do you see now? Y'all still don't see it?
Thank you. Someone, if you will scroll down, take the little bar at the top and scroll down, you can actually see Kelly's presentation there. Now we can see it, Kelly.
Okay, perfect.
If you want to do present mode, we can now see it up in the upper pane. There we go. You got it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all. Sorry about that. Okay, so prior to 2019, just quickly to give you some background, we did not have technically a route to certification for our computer science teachers. Thus, our business marketing or our programming and software development teachers, our network teachers, or a hodgepodge of teachers that were teaching courses that were properly aligned to their certificates were able to teach those courses. Since that time, with this new legislation that was adopted in 2019, which is Act 2019-389, stated that we had to have some specific for computer science. One specific is that the person that is teaching a computer science course, especially the 12 permit or 13 permit courses, must hold some type of computer science certification. So I'm going to go over the options to obtain computer science certification. So we have the degree equivalent route. These are for individuals that are coming directly from industry with computer science experience that would like to start this approach. The computer science additional teaching field is for individuals who currently hold a professional certificate of some type and would like to take the Praxis that Carol is going to go over with you, how to ace that, and be able to add that endorsement to your existing certificate, or through our degree equivalent additional teaching fields. That again would be for individuals who hold only a degree equivalent to or higher and be able to add it through their occupational proficiency. Okay. So the degree equivalent route, our technical education route, is a 5-step process. Okay. Everyone has to start with the initial process. That is our Tech Ed 1 or our degree equivalent 1. That is driven solely by one's experience that they hold in the industry and the occupational proficiency that they have. Okay. So let's look at the bachelor's equivalent 1. There are 3 options to get to that initial approach. You have what we call option 1, which is anyone that has less than a bachelor's degree. If you have less than a bachelor's degree, then you have to take what we call our CTE Basic Skills Work Assessment, and that is basic math. That's the CTE Business and Industry Writing Exam and the English part of it. It's 5,400 clock hours or 3 years in the area within the past 7 years from date of application, and the entry level and master level occupational proficiency. I'm going to show you the entry level and master level occupational proficiency once we progress on. Okay. This is the beginning stages. Okay. Or option 2, if you have a bachelor's degree in any area, long as it's regionally accredited, you have 2 years of work experience in computer science within the past 5 years, and the entry level or master level occupational proficiency, you can begin. Or if you have 10 years in industry in computer science, then, and you have the CTE basic skills if you have less than a bachelor's degree, or it's not required if you have a bachelor's degree in the entry level or master level occupational proficiency, you can begin. The caveat to this is teaching experience in a P-12 setting is not considered industry work experience. Okay, so all of it would have to been like me. I worked for Alabama Power for a year prior to becoming a teacher. So that would be my industry experience. You could use that as industry experience coming in. So that's the initial phase. I'm not going to go through each one of these because I just want to kind of make sure that I'm just scratching the surface here with you all. And if you have questions, I have my email and contact information at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. But the initial one is it's a 2-year certificate and it's non-renewable. And it has to be requested by your employing county or city superintendent. So they would have to request it on your behalf as long as you meet one of the 3 options. I will go by bachelor's equivalent 2 because this is where we want individuals to get to. So if you don't want to go any higher on this approach, you need to at least get to the bachelor's equivalent 2, which is a 5-year renewable certificate. That would be equivalent to someone holding at least a Class B professional educator certificate in computer science. And to get there, you would have to at least complete that CTE TCP level 1. That is a program that has been developed by the state, and it is outsourced to what we call SREB. Inside of that, it teaches one how to develop a CTSO, how to be successful. It teaches classroom management. It teaches one how to handle students with special needs. And it has some testing and evaluations inside of that course as well. Okay, it's a year-long course and it's free. Once you hold at least the bachelor's equivalent 1, you can start working on the bachelor's equivalent 2. The difference between the 1 and the 2 is the 2, an individual can self-submit that application. They do not have to have the superintendent to request that. And that would be the same for the 3, the 4, and the 5. I'm going to go back so you can see this. The computer science occupational proficiencies that I was speaking on earlier, you have entry level and master's level. The difference is if you decide to just stay at the bachelor's equivalent 2, then any of the occupational proficiencies that's listed on the left-hand side of your screen, you would have to meet those. If you would like to move to the master's equivalent 3 or higher, you would have to meet the occupational proficiencies that's listed on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay. These are the occupational proficiencies that's in effect right now. That would be July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Amanda and Don, I'm sorry.
Kelly, we do have a question from Kimberly. Does having a bachelor's in CS change any of the requirements versus a bachelor's in something else?
The only requirement that it will change is that it meets the entry-level occupational proficiency, and it would exempt the individual, if they're interested in this approach, it would exempt the individual from having to take the basic skills. But just to remind everyone that this particular approach is driven strictly by your work experience. They say, let me see what you have in industry, because you are a master at that trade, and then everything else will follow. Whereas when we get ready to talk about the other approaches, your formal training will drive more of that particular approach rather than your work experience. So those are the difference. Tammy, did I answer that question? Any other ones out there? Okay. All right. So the master's equivalent 3, this just allows you to progress. Also, the name of the certificate is the level at which the school system is obligated to pay you at. So say an individual only comes in with a certificate of completion in computer science or CSI, and they start this particular approach, although they may just have a technical ed certificate, they'll be paid at the bachelor's level. So the way that we credential them has nothing to do with the level of the certificate. The level of the certificate tells the school system at what level to pay an individual at. So this can go all the way up to someone holding, they may only hold a master's degree, but they're getting paid at the 6-year equivalent level. And I've put these requirements out here so that you can see. You have to hold a bachelor's degree for the 4, or have at least a Class B certificate in any teaching field and the master's level occupational proficiency. And if you want to move to what we call the 6-year equivalent, the one that's equivalent to a EDS, you have to have a master's degree in that area in computer science, or at least have a Class A professional certificate in any area or an area of instructional support, or PLC, and the master level occupational proficiency. Okay. Any questions on the degree equivalent approach?
Kelly, we do have a couple of questions. So
Okay,
one question from Robert: what about a master's in a coding area, but in a business degree as well as work experience? That is question number 1.
Okay. If an individual have a generic computer or technology related degree, they have to have at least 15 hours or 1/3. Let me go back and clear that up. 1/3 of the instruction or the courses has to be computer science driven. Okay, so 1/3 of the coursework has to be in that area. That evaluation is done by, it's a team of us that do that evaluation to look and make sure that 1/3 of the courses. We also reach back out to the institution to get descriptions of those particular courses. And if it meets that requirement, then it will be approved to meet one of these requirements. If it is not, then we reach back out to let you know that it does not meet that particular rule. And that will also be listed on the applications as well when we update the applications coming up very soon.
The other question from Daryl: how is industry experience documented? If someone has work experience as an engineer or something else that isn't explicitly computer science, for instance, how would they show relevant job experience?
We have a form that's called Supplement CTV, that they document their work experience. On that particular form, the employer has to tell us exactly the specific job detail, and then they have to write us a letter on their letterhead also describing in detail what that looks like. If it's an area that has some gray in it or some overlap, like it could really be sitting under programming and software development, or it could also sit under computer science, then again, that same team comes back that has experts in the area, and we have them to look at it and see if it meets that criteria. If it does, you proceed on through the approach. If it does not, then we'll come back and let you know what the findings were. So it's a form that the state has developed to document that.
Thank you, Kelly. And Daryl says thank you. I was going to say, Robert and Daryl, if you have a question, put it in the chat. So Kelly, that takes care of the questions so far.
All right, thank you, Tammy. All right, now the degree equivalent additional teaching field. I'm still talking about these individuals that are coming in from industry and they now hold at least that bachelor's equivalent 2. And you remember the 2 is important because it's a renewable certificate. Okay, it allows an individual to sit there to the duration of their teaching career. Okay, so if they hold at least a 2 and they want to add an additional teaching field, they can. Okay, in order to do that, as I've said before, you have to have a 2 or higher in the technical education program area, and then you have to verify 2 full years of classroom teaching experience. Now, the 2 full years does not have to be in the area that you're requesting. It can be in any area as long as it's a P12 classroom teaching experience. Okay. In order to add that, you would have to meet one of the occupational proficiencies. Okay. If you hold a master's equivalent 3, but you said, I only want to take the MTAs in 2 areas, what would happen at that point is you may hold a 3 in programming and software development, but you do not want to move up to these higher level programming areas or obtain all 4 of them. If you only want to obtain 2, we will build you a bachelor's equivalent 2 certificate based off that. That doesn't mean that your skills in computer science is less than your skills in programming and software development. It just shows us that this is the requirement for the certificate that you have met at this time. It's some people that hold a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. your certificate if they've continued to add different program areas to their existing certificate. I know some of you all on here that are programming and software development holders, certificate holders. You're looking at this and it almost mirrors each other than your programming and software development certificate holders have an additional area that they have to meet for the MTAs. So that allows people that was probably previously teaching computer science courses to not have so many hoops to jump over to be able to add computer science. So when we launched, or when this act was adopted, we wanted to make sure that although we were following all of the rules that was outlined in this legislation, that we also made it so that people that were teaching it did not have such a hard time obtaining that certificate. So we've talked about two approaches. That's the degree equivalent, getting the initial certificate and moving up through that process, how to document those training and work experience, and then once you obtain it, how to add additional teaching fields. Remember, right now, I think we have close to 54 programs in technical education that one can teach and add based on an occupational proficiency. And when I use that word occupational proficiency, it correlates or it's aligned with taking a Praxis exam. So that's what it would be aligned to. That would be the Praxis exam for individuals in the technical education world. Are there any questions about these two approaches?
Kelly, I think when you talked about the Praxis, quit doing the Praxis, that answered a couple of the questions. So a person who has a current permit that's good through a course specific permit through 2024 has asked, can they renew their course specific permit through training? And I think I know the answer to that, but you're the expert, so I'm going to let you answer that.
You cannot renew a permit. What happens is with the permit, once we have issued it for those 3 years, we're wanting you to find a professional route, either through the degree equivalent or through adding it to your existing professional certificate. So that's why I'm trying to give you an option. And I put the permit intentionally at the end of this presentation so that you can see the professional routes to certification, either through the technical ed or either through the Praxis, as Carol will go over steps to be able to ace that. So the permit is really just a stopgap. It's just allowing people that have been teaching those courses in the past or have obtained training or are interested in teaching computer science to be able to get their feet wet or continue to build their programs while they're moving toward professional routes to certification in computer science. Because the legislation says that those permits are they're temporary.
Kelly, those are our only questions so far.
Okay. All right, so I've been talking a lot about that legislation, and so I just kind of want to let everyone know where this came from, why it was so important, and why you feel like it was just kind of dumped on your lap. Although we have, Dawn and I and our team prior to Amanda come and talked about it, put it out so superintendents would know that this was coming down the pipe so that they would have an idea of how it would look. But the law states inside of there that it's two things that's important. That's that computer science additional teaching field, which I'll talk to you very soon, and the computer science course specific permit. So those were the two areas. So Dawn and I thought, and our team thought and said, well, we need to make sure that we have it so that our technical ed applicants would be able to obtain it and not just our professional educators. So that's why the degree equivalent route, which is our tech ed route, also has an opportunity to add computer science, and they can teach the exact same courses as one who holds a professional educator certificate. So what you're looking at is the two pieces out of that legislation that has driven these decisions that are made related to certification for computer science. Okay, now the computer science additional teaching field. So a lot of you all that's probably on this particular breakout session or in this particular breakout session, excuse me, are very familiar with what we call our certification based on tests. The difference between this approach and that, and the reason why this one stands by itself, is that you have to have no teaching experience in order to add computer science to your existing certificate. You only have to pass the Praxis, which Carol is going to help you ace that and show you how to ace it and give you some techniques there. and then make a 149 on Praxis 5652. If you hold an existing professional educator certificate of any type in any area, you can add computer science. That application comes to me, I'll review it as long as you have that score, and I add it to your certificate. No teaching experience required. Okay. Any questions on this particular approach? All right, last but not least, our computer science course specific permit. Okay, so I'm not going to read these. I'm just going to kind of tell you what it looks like. And what's the biggest thing that I want everyone to remember. In order to have a course specific permit requested on your behalf from your employing county or city superintendent is that you have to hold a valid Alabama professional educator certificate, okay? Or a degree equivalent to or higher certificate, all right? No, or professional leadership certificate. You cannot hold an emergency, you cannot hold a temporary, you cannot hold an adjunct, and you cannot hold a bachelor's equivalent one. Those are all considered emergency type certificates or certificates that will not allow one to advance to a professional certificate of any type. Okay. Once that initial checkbox is complete, then I look down and see what's next. Have you completed training from one of our Alabama State Department approved providers, which A+ is one of them? Or if you have, has it been within the last 36 months? If it has not been within the last 36 months, then you have to show me that you've taught that particular course within the last 2 years. If you haven't, then you have to go back and retake that course over. It has to be your initial training, okay? That is put in there because the legislation said that it has to be current. Your training has to be current within the last 24 to 36 months. So the only way that we can vet that is to make sure that if you haven't taught it, which means it's not current to you, that you need to go back and revisit A+ or the University of Alabama or any of our other college boards, any of our other providers, and retake that course over, okay? It is coming around town to, I think it was like 2018, 2019 that some of us, some of the applicants started the initial training, and they have not taught the course in the last 2 years. So they would have to go back in and redo that training with A+ or any of our other providers, okay? So those are your two options. If you've taught it within the last 24 months and you've had the current training, you can move forward with the permit. If you have, if it's been more than 36 months, then you would have to show me that you've taught that course at least 1 year. So then we have how that is documented is that we reach back out to your school system and they have to tell us, and I pull your schedule as well to see if you've taught that specific course that you're requesting their permit for, and then I can issue the certificate. If not, then I go back to your school system and say you have to complete the training, the most current training, so that I can issue the permit. Are there any questions on that? Our last option is we have Alabama.
Kelly,
I'm sorry.
there's a question.
Okay.
I think I know the answer, but I don't want to, I definitely don't want to. Is there, if a person passes the Praxis, does that give them this credential for all grade levels? Or is that for all grade levels?
It would be for 6 to 12 right now.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just want to make sure.
Yes, computer science is 6 to 12. We are exploring other options because we have to be aligned with our sister states. So that do issue P to 12 certificates in computer science, but to meet the demands of the legislation and the time frame that we had, 6 to 12 right now is all of our coursework is aligned to. And as Donna and Amanda start expanding that, we would have to look at some additional certificate options. But right now it's just 6 to 12. Okay. Last but not least, the third option to get that permit is if you have credit for a ALSD approved college or university that has requested to teach those computer science courses. Right now, the University of Alabama is our only approved provider. and it's only one of their courses. So it's a prerequisite course to another course. So the other course that you would need to have that solidified has not been approved yet. So we're in the process of that, but it has not been approved yet. All of this information is located on our website. It's located on the computer science application. It specifies all these things. I just try to surmise it and be as lean with it as possible. And I know I've probably spoken very quickly, but if you have questions, my email address and information will be here. You can send it to this edcert@ALSDE, or you can call and ask to speak with me. I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. The goal is to obtain a professional certificate in computer science so that you can teach any of the computer science courses. Does anyone have any additional questions for me? All right.
Here's a clarifying question. So if a person is at the elementary level and wants to teach CS, they would not have to take the Praxis.
If they're at the elementary level and they want to teach CS,
yes,
exploring computer science, or just is it a permit course? Of which course is it, or is it an elementary course? I would need to know the specific
Tim, that's Tim's question. Tim, can you talk about which course you're talking about? Yeah, he says whatever's applicable at the elementary level. I mean, right now, Tim, I don't believe we have a course-specific permit associated with any elementary courses that I know of, but Kelly, you certainly would be the expert on that.
That's correct. 4 to 8. 4th grade is our lowest right now grade that we have. So if you're an elementary teacher and you're having, like some of our rural counties, the tech coordinator serves as that person, so they go between several schools. If that is the case, you have to be properly certified to teach any course that is above the certificate that you hold. So if you're teaching above K6, above 6th grade, and there's a computer science course that requires you to be certified in, you would either have to have the permit for that or take the Praxis and add it to your certificate.
Perfect. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. And y'all.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm going to stay on here
with Carol. And if you have more questions, and Kelly now can maybe look at the chat, because, you know, Kelly, I answer stuff. Carol will tell you this, and sometimes I may not know quite as much as I think I know. So I've tried not to do that in this. But Carol, so there's lots of interest and discussion about the Praxis in this thread. So would you kind of talk about teachers about an opportunity to prepare for that?
Yes, I will. I would love to. And first, I want to thank Dr. Stanton for giving us all the information. I've been taking notes furiously about how you're working to make sure that teachers are qualified to teach computer science. And I've started sharing my screen. Let's see, maybe I haven't. Whoops, I did, and then I lost it. I'm sorry. Okay, you can see my slides? Yes, okay. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Praxis itself, and then about what we're doing to help teachers prepare for it. Whoops, just a second here. Okay, so as Dr. Stanton mentioned, the Alabama cut score is 149. And ETS, Educational Testing Services, actually is who has created and offers the Praxis. So they have on their website, you can get this guide for free. So that's my advice to anyone who's thinking about taking the Praxis, is go ahead onto the ETS website and see what they have available, information about the test. Here's kind of the test at the glance. So it is the 5652. It's a 3-hour test, and there are 100 objectively scored questions. They're not all multiple choice. Some are where you kind of drag things in order. Some are you click all the correct answers, but it is delivered on a computer. It was at a testing center. I guess now you can do it at home because of COVID. I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. But here's a breakdown of the categories of content. So impact of computing, algorithms and programming, that's 25%. Or algorithms and computational thinking is 25%. Programming is another 30%. And then data, and then computing systems and networking. So, 55% of it is algorithms and programming, debugging, that kind of thing. So that's huge. This is from the ETS study guide. They have a mini page study plan where you can kind of look at the things that are going to be on the test and do a self-assessment and see what it is that you personally need to study for. They also have a practice test. It's an online test, 100 questions that you can purchase for $20 to have access to it. And you have access to it for a limited amount of time, but I think it's money well spent just to get a feel for what's actually going to be on the test. And but really what I want to talk about today, what I think is the exciting news, is that we are going to offer, thanks to generous funding from the ALSDE, we're going to be able to offer a Praxis preparation course to our public school teachers at no cost to you, and also through the generous help of the Maryland Center for Computing Education. They originally developed this course, and they have agreed to give it to us to help us train Alabama teachers. So we're taking their course and we're modifying it, and we're adding a little more support here and there. And so that's what we are currently doing is taking that course and sort of beefing it up and getting it ready for our Alabama teachers. And the course consists of 3 levels. Level 1, I'm calling the basics. It's declaring variables, creating functions, that kind of thing. Level 2 is algorithms and procedures. And then level 3 is arrays, objects, events, data structures, libraries. So, level 3 is where it is more kind of your CSA content, if you're familiar with the AP CSA course. Level 2 is more kind of your CS principles, the AP CS principles course. And this is, frankly, an optimistic timeline, but we're really hoping we're going to be able to do this, that this summer we will have the level 1 course, the basics, available in early June for teachers to start going through that course. And even an experienced teacher, I would recommend going through the course as a review, because, remember, it is created specifically to prepare you for the Praxis. So it's really going to focus on the things you need to know to be successful on the Praxis. And then our hope is we'll have the level 2 out a month later and the level 3 out a month after that. These are going to be totally asynchronous courses, but there will be a moderator available to answer your questions. There will be a couple synchronous sessions in office hours if you just want to get on and talk. But you won't be just out there on your own. There will be someone to help guide you through it. And right now we know that the people who received their course-specific permit last summer have 3 years from that time to make it permanent, as Dr. Stanton said. So no one's course-specific permit is going to expire in the next 6 months. So we feel we have a little breathing room, make sure that we get this right so we can prepare teachers properly. So I think I've mentioned all this already, but basically it is going to be available to you at no cost. And for teachers who have a little more experience, at the end of each level, there is a culminating assessment. And for those who pass that, and by pass we're defining that as 85% correct, for those who pass it, then it's kind of like they've, tested out of that level. And we will give you multiple opportunities. The whole point is for you to learn the material and to be able to pass it. So if you take the culminating quiz on level 1 the first time and you get a 60, you can, look at the material again, you can work with the moderator, and you can, take the quiz again. And, once you've gotten an 85%, then you can move on to the next level. And for teachers who have, Alabama public school teachers who have successfully completed all 3 levels of the prep course, we will be able to reimburse you for the cost of taking the Praxis exam. And if you've not taken a Praxis exam lately, it's $120. So we think that's like a really great benefit. So in addition to helping prepare you for it, we will reimburse your costs for taking that, because we all really want to have more qualified computer science teachers in the classroom. Some other states have resources, Arkansas being one who has.
Hey, Carol, can you give me a minute to look through? I mean, so I just want to tell you, there's a lot of excitement on this chat box about this, even before you said a free test. So I want to tell you, I want to be sure that, so we had a question about, is this for different courses? So I want to tell you what I said, Carol and Kelly, and y'all make sure. So the Praxis test that everyone takes is the same, whether you're a middle school computer science teacher, an exploring computer science teacher, a project lead the way computer science teacher. The Praxis is the same. I answered that correctly. Is that right?
Yes, 6th through 12th grade.
Yes.
Whatever course.
And so sign up is coming soon for those, and they're asking how do they get in. So Carol, that's it. And we have a lot of gratitude. I think Dawn may be on here. So Dawn, I just want you, I hope you're reading the chat, the gratitude for this resource. Okay, Carol, I think that's the only question. I just want to make sure I'd answered that correctly.
Okay, and actually at the end of this presentation, there's a link for a Google form, and there's a bit.ly for it, so it's easy to remember, that you can let us know that you're interested, so that we can keep you up to date when things are available and make sure that you're in the first group of teachers who participate in this course. And this is just mentioning that there are some other things out there. Notably, Arkansas has some pretty decent study resources available on their website for teachers. So this next section, so once you've prepared for the test, you're actually going to take the test. And so when I took the Praxis test, after I finished, I went out to the car and wrote down real fast what types of questions were on it, just any information I thought that I could, legitimately provide to teachers to help them prepare. And these are kind of what I saw as the big topics. The basics, declaring variables, strings versus numbers, writing functions, parameters, that kind of thing. And then a lot of things that are part of the APCS Principles course, things about the internet, things about data, of course, programming algorithms, and underlying everything is the computational thinking that Ruth Farmer was talking about earlier. And then there's a section what I call APCSA topics, and that is object-oriented programming. That is probably the piece that's going to be most difficult for most teachers, because not many teachers teach that course. And so that will be what's in the level 3 prep course. And there is a lot of code tracing and debugging. And so it's, just like we tell our students all the time, it's very important to get into the habit of, tracing code on paper. What's it going to do? Just thinking step by step through the program. Sometimes they'll give you code and they'll say, what is this going to output? And other times they'll give you code and say, this is what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't work right. And then that's the debugging piece. Then you trace through that code and figure out why it doesn't work right. So the basics, logic, there's some basic sort of how computers work, the fetch, decode, execute cycle, a little bit about understanding compilers, interpreters, Boolean logic, the digital divide. And you notice some of these topics, I have a number next to them. What that number represents is the sample question from the ETS study guide that's on that topic. So question number 23 is about understanding compilers and interpreters. 13 is about Boolean logic. And here, and I know we're kind of tight on time, so we don't really have time to sit here and work the problems, but if you do have a pencil and paper, look through it. But this is just to give you an idea of the kinds of questions that are on the test. So this is a De Morgan's Law question. So if you understand that Boolean logic, this will be answer D. So these slides are available for you to look at later, so we don't really have the time to work all the problems. Then the CS principles topics. These are the things that, if you teach CS principles, you're very aware of. Abstraction, heuristics, data analysis, data visualization, lossy versus lossless compression, innovations, the internet, networking, some cybersecurity, a little bit of math stuff, Creative Commons, child protection laws. Those are things that probably a teacher in any subject is familiar with, but they're particularly important when your students are doing everything on a computer for your course. And then the robot problems there, where you have a robot in a grid and you tell them to go forward 3, turn right 90 degrees, go forward 2 more, those kind of problems, and then modelings and simulations. And I know this is probably very small, but this question is really just talking about a technology company has an application that lets users combine text file and recording to create accurate audio representation of the person speaking the text. Which of the following are possible uses? And it says select all that apply. So that's one thing I really wanted to point out, is that some of the questions are a little different than what you're used to training your students for. So here, it's not select the best answer or select the best 2, it's select all that apply. And in this case, all 3 of those possible answers apply. So, that's how you would mark it in the Praxis exam. Here's another question about Huffman coding, and this is related to lossless compression. But, again, just to give you an idea of the kinds of questions that are on there. Here's another one about a computer simulation. So modeling and simulation, that's one of the topics. And it talks about how can you validate and make sure your model is really good. And, you would perform real world experiments and compare that to what your computer divides. So that's just kind of a fundamental knowledge of how modeling and simulations work. So then there's what I'm calling the CSA topics: object-oriented programming, classes and objects, runtime efficiency of algorithms, like actually calculating, is this linear or is this polynomial? Students need to be familiar with the binary search, with sorting, selection, insertion, and merge sort. Those are the same sorts that an APCSA student is familiar with and responsible for. And then recursion, being able to trace recursive methods and just the concept of recursion. And then there are some data structures questions. And I have a little asterisk there. That's a little bit beyond the scope of APCSA. So there are some questions on stacks and queues and heaps. And for anyone who's been around a long time, those are topics that used to be on the old APCS-AB course. And I believe the last year that exam was offered was around 2009. But it's very standard for a computer science major in college. That's a second semester, like CS 102 kind of course. And here's a sample problem, really just talking about a salesman is going to figure out the best route to minimize expenses with someone going from city to city. And it asks, if they're going to look at all the possible routes, what is the runtime of this? So this is calculating algorithmic efficiency. And this one actually is factorial. So in computer science principles terms, we would call that not reasonable time, because there are lots of different ways that they can do that, lots of things to look at. And another sample problem where it's just talking about what is the best kind of data structure to model 3 different scenarios: dictionaries, queues, stacks. And this just shows you the 3 different scenarios and which is the best way to model it. And then, so that was just, I just wanted you to get an idea of the kinds of questions that are going to be on there. And this code tracing and lots of it, I can't say that enough. Practicing code tracing is such an important skill for all of us that, make sure that that's something you're doing daily when you're working with your students, show them to trace code, but also do it yourself. And some of the questions might be related to arrays or some of the standard algorithms, searching, sorting, finding the min, finding the max of a list, those kind of things that we see a lot. And then debugging, finding a problem in code. Why doesn't this work like we expect it would? And then here's a sample program. They show you some pseudocode. So there is a 2-page pseudocode reference sheet. Because people taking this exam may be familiar with many different programming languages, they've developed this sort of generic pseudocode. It's a little bit different than what you see on the CS Principles exam. So there is specific pseudocode for the Praxis, and this is written using that pseudocode. So we have this mystery method. It takes a parameter that's an integer and it returns an integer, and it's got some iteration, it's got a for loop, it's got some selection, it's got an if in there, and this is just having you trace through the code and figure out, what does it do? And it returns, multiples of j from 1 to n. And this one is tiny, I know, but this is another one. And it's intended to print odd integers, but it doesn't. So this is a debugging problem. So you look through that code, you trace out that code, and you figure out why it doesn't do that. And you indicate specifically, the line of code that has a mistake in it. So that's a quick overview of what's on the test. I want to make sure we have time for questions. But I have a bit.ly that has this presentation and any resources that I have referenced. bit.ly, and bit.lys are case sensitive. So it's a capital A, lowercase l, and then Praxis Prep with camel case, Praxis Prep. And if you are interested in this course, if you could fill out the Google form that's at AL Praxis Prep Interest with a capital I, then we will have your name and we will let you know when we start having things available. And we'll just keep you up to date on any information about the Praxis Prep course.
Carol, can you repeat that? We have a couple of questions about how can they register. Again, repeat that AL Praxis.
Okay, so I need you to fill out this form, and if you forget this, you can just send me an email, carol@aplusala.org. But I would prefer, it would help if you were to fill out this form. It's at bit.ly/capital A, lowercase l, Praxis with a capital P, Prep, capital PREP, interest, capital I, and then lowercase the rest of the word. AL Praxis Prep Interest. And it's a bit.ly. And once you get your name on that list, then you will be informed of any happenings related to the Praxis Prep course.
All right, Carol, can I squeeze in some questions here in our time that's remaining? The first one is one, let me find it because there's just a lot of stuff on this chat. Maureen, I'm looking for it. The question, and Kelly, this is probably a question for you about will the CS certification cover cybersecurity, or is there another certification for cybersecurity?
The professional or the technical ed 6 to 12 will cover all computer science courses, the cybersecurity included. The course specific certifications only cover that specific course. So if you obtain the degree equivalent technical education, computer science, it would allow you to teach all computer science courses, including that cybersecurity. And Dawn may correct me unless they're thinking about doing some changes there. And then if you hold the professional certificate in computer science, it would allow you to teach those courses as well. And Dawn, if something else is changing, please correct me.
Carol, there was a question about the expected time to complete each of the prep courses. I did respond what I think is the answer, that it's really dependent on the individual's expertise. But do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. And Tammy's right. It really depends on where you are personally, but the moderator will be available for 3 weeks. So there's a 3-week time period. And during that 3 weeks, you may decide to sit down on a weekend and just push through it and complete it. Or you may work, an hour a day every now and then and complete it. But you will have the moderator available to answer your questions during a 3-week time period. Certainly the level 1 probably faster than the level 3, particularly if you're not familiar with the topics in the level 3. But it is totally, asynchronous, self-paced. We just have a moderator there to help answer your questions and give you some guidance.
I do want to add, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there are quizzes associated with lessons in the courses. And so, for example, everyone will have to do all 3 courses in order to get a reimbursement for the Praxis. However, if you're an expert and you can just pass every quiz without doing any of the coursework, you can just progress through the courses. Carol, is that a correct statement, what I just said?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And if it's all brand new to you, then you can take some time. For every topic in each course, there is a presentation. There are some practice questions with videos, showing of someone working through those practice questions. There are some information sheet, kind of a reading associated with every topic. So there's lots of sources of information, but you do have to successfully complete the quizzes to then move on to the next course.
All right, Carol, a question from Timo Cobb. Would using reviews for AP Computer Science Principles and Computer Science A be advantageous to preparing for the Praxis exam?
Yes, Timo, those are definitely topics that are covered on the Praxis. There are a few more, looking at ETS's guide would be helpful, or, working through this exam prep course that we're working on will also help get you ready. But yeah, if you feel really comfortable with CSA and CSP, you're a long way towards being successful on the Praxis.
Carol, another question. If a teacher selects 2021 on this form, do they have to finish during the summer, or would they have until December?
They would have more time.
Okay.
To complete it, yes.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions. Participants, I hope I didn't miss any questions. I did put the prep interest form in the chat, and I am typing in the Carol's presentation. That was a request right now Well, Carol took it down. Carol, what's the end on that? That's okay. Is it Alabama Praxis Prep?
It's AL Praxis Prep, yes. And this
presentation, right?
The presentation and some other resources are there.
Yeah. Okay.
And then on this, yeah. And
All
you
right.
can find the link to the form in the presentation.
So I just want to thank you all, and hey Roy, good to see you. I want to thank everyone, and I just want to thank you all. I know Dawn has been on here. She may be visiting others, but I have to do a big old thank you to Dawn and the ALSDE for using some of their appropriation for you guys. And those of you who middle school teachers like, OMG. I mean, I feel your pain, because I look at it like I'm not a computer science teacher, but it's a foreign language to me. So I can feel your pain. But remember, that's what this is for. We're here to help you. And remember, if you do this course, it will not only prepare you to take the Praxis, but just think about how much of a better teacher you will be from learning this content knowledge yourself. So elementary, remember, Tim, you don't have to have this certification to teach elementary, to integrate that CS in your courses. But kudos to you for being on here and wanting to be an expert in your field. So thank you for that. Well, team, we're going to go. I can't thank Carol and Kelly enough for being such extraordinary experts for our session today. And I believe we're on a break now. I have no idea really, but someone who's looking at the agenda can tell me. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, the computer science, and let's keep the computer science momentum going for Alabama students. Thank you all so much.